Hey guys, Pastor Sean coming to you today with today's daily devotion. I'm in the studio here at Irwin Hill. We just had Bible study. Tonight's Bible study was about David and Nathan. Nathan comes to David and he tells him a story. He said there was two men. One was rich, one was poor, and they lived in the same city. And the rich man had everything that he wanted, herds and flocks and all. And the poor man had one lamb. And he let that lamb grow up with him and his children, and he slept in his bed. He ate at his table. He drank from the poor man's cup. He just was like a child to the poor man. And a traveler came through the town, and the rich man didn't want to kill any animals from his own flock, so he took the poor man's lamb, killed it, dressed it, and ate it. David becomes enraged and says, "Whoever has done this will surely die." Nathan looks at him and says, "You're the man." And David is shocked. David is shocked. And you know the rest of the story. Nathan tells him, he says, "You took the wife of Uriah. You sent Uriah the Hittite out to die. You took his wife and made her your wife. You have sinned before God." And David admits, he says, "I have sinned." Nathan pronounces the sentence, "The sword shall never depart from your house." And we know that Absalom and Amnon and all of David's sons revolt against him. And there's just turmoil and trouble throughout David's remainder of his life with his own family. David, a man who succeeded in everything that he put his hands to, was a failure inside the four walls of his own home. And so we looked at that lesson tonight. The final sentence that God gives them is that the child who was born from David and Bathsheba's adulterous relationship, will die. And David says at the end of the turmoil, after the child has died, he says, "While the child was alive, I prayed, I fasted, I wept before the Lord, because there was a chance that the Lord may relent, change his mind on this. But after the child was dead, there's nothing I can do. There's no reason for me to fast." So David gets up, he washes his face, he takes a shower, he puts on some cologne, he gets dressed, and he goes to the house of the Lord and worships. I think that is amazing. David went to church. He just lost a child, and he went to church. He had just been found out as an adulteress, and he went to church. He had just had his world turned completely upside down by God, and he went to church. To me, that is amazing. He went to the house of the Lord and worshiped. That's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about this one thing that David says. He says, "I cannot bring the child to me, but I can go to where he is." That's a verse that I've held on to for decades. We lost a child in 1995, and I've held on to that verse of Scripture. I've held on to that passage for decades, because I can't bring my daughter back to me, but I can go to where she is. And so there are verses like that in the Scripture that we hang on to. So my recommendation to you this week, the devotion is this: find some Scripture. Find some Scripture that you can hang on to. Find some Scripture that you can sink your teeth into, and when the going gets tough, you hold on to that Scripture and know that God is on your side. Some people say that, "I know the plans," Jeremiah, "I know the plans that I have for you, plans to make you prosper, to bless you, to increase you." That's a verse that they hang on to. Some people say, "For we know," this is mine, Romans 8:28, "for we know that all things work together for good of them who love God and are called according to his purpose." That's one that I hang on to. Find a verse. Find passages of Scripture. Find things that you can hang on to and sink your teeth into. David, when his child had died, he had been found out, his sin had been exposed. He had to face the reality that he was going to have to deal with this sin that was in his life, and that God had judged him and forgiven him. Then David looks around and says, "You know what? I'm going to worship God. I'm going to worship God. And he found something down deep inside of him that helped him to hang on to the words that God had given him. He knew that he couldn't bring the child back, but he knew that he could go to where the child was. He knew he could go to an eternity with God because he had found scriptures. He had found the Word. He had found things in the Torah. He had written Psalms down that spoke to him. So find a scripture. Hang on to it. And when times get tough, remind God of His Word. I love you. I'm praying for you. Hope to see you this weekend at Irwin Hill. Have a great tonight and a fantastic tomorrow. God bless you is my prayer.